The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
BWB, this is One Nation Radio. You better get it right. Rich Latta, James Boyd came to give them life. The Blackest Wrestling Podcast has come to kick all ass and drop it 6 feet if they kicking trash. Word, let me welcome y'all to something different. And if you dig it, man, you should let some friends listen. We be getting it in, this on the regular, dude. Ravish and flow, but this shit rude. See, James don't rap, so I had to break it down. The whole network, man, we coming for the crown. Raps in the columns, I keep them both covered. Making the beats too, so the listeners can bump it. Hit us with the rating, yeah, I'm saying it's a 5. Before you hit it, talk, bob your head side to side. It's One Nation Radio, and this is the beginning. It's Rich, and I'm here with James. It's time to listen to One Nation.
We got to unleash the power of the pyramid.
This is Mike Sempervive from WrestlingObserver.com. Check me out on Wrestling Observer Live every day. And also check out your boys, Rich and James, on One Nation Radio.
This is Kenny Omega. We're listening to One Nation Radio. Check it out, guys. These guys know what's up. Big Kenny Omega fans, and that's all that counts to me. Goodbye and good night. Bang.
Welcome to the May 24th edition of One Nation Radio. My name is Rich Latta. One time for all the real ones. Glad y'all locked in with me this week. We got a lot to talk about. First, I come to you on video as well as in podcast form. If this is your first time seeing me, welcome. If this is your first time experiencing One Nation Radio, welcome. If you've heard me before, you know what it is. It is fucking on. I represent the Social Suplex Podcast Network, as you can see on my shirt, for those of you guys checking this out in video form, on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/DangerRichTV. Make sure you guys drop a rating and a review for this podcast on your platform of choice. Remember, we are an independent podcast network, and our budget comes from word of mouth, and the only way we're going to reach more people is by your likes, your shares, your ratings, and, you know, just rocking with us. And make sure you check out all the other shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We got the Outsider's Edge with Rance and Carl. We got the Ricky and Clive Wrestling Show. We got Keepin It Strong Style. We got Grown Men Watch This Shit and the Impact Report with Caleb Baldwin. And, of course, One Nation Radio with your boy Rich here. Yeah, man, so we've got some things to talk about. Lots of big news in wrestling this week. I wasn't on for One Nation Live, honestly, because I had a lot to do. I was finalizing some things and, you know, doing a lot of stuff around the house. I did get my new car, so if you follow me on Instagram, you can check that out. So Smackdown has sold, essentially, for a whole lot of money. It's no secret by this point, WWE got a shit ton of money. I'm talking billions of dollars, so that's right. Daniel Bryan came out of retirement, and 2 months later, they got the bag thrown down on their front steps. So from SportsIllustrated.com, I'm reading it. WWE reached an agreement with Fox to move Smackdown Live from the USA Network to Fox. That was reported by ESPN's Darren Rovell. Fox will air Smackdown on the main Fox broadcast channel and shift it from Tuesdays to Fridays. I don't know how that's all going to work with the taping schedule. You're going to see it definitely impact WrestleMania weekend. They're going to have to shift some stuff around. The deal's over $1 billion. That's $205 million a year for 5 years. So one can only imagine what the deal may be next time. Not sure how that's all going to play out, though, because this whole TV rights network bubble, this feels like this thing's due to bust anytime. My co-host of this show, James, who's been on sabbatical since WrestleMania 34, had been talking to me about TV rights fees years ago, and this is like when the NBA stuff was coming up, and it was like, man, I don't know how they're gonna keep paying all this money, because eventually, like, all this shit is going to streaming. So maybe, you know, WWE was a little bit ahead of the game on it, but I still think that keeps the network in their back pocket as a valuable tool. the whole thing is going to jump off in October 2019, and their current contract expires basically with NBC Universal on September 30th, 2019. So they'll just transition right over. Fox was, the long-time rumor, reported by Meltzer, of course. And, this is crazy because $1 billion. So they got more money than the UFC, and apparently cash in, that clearly doesn't equal creative. I don't care how much money they're getting. I don't watch money. I watch the show. And in this year, in 2017, I haven't ever personally witnessed like more frustrating, problematic years of pro wrestling in ages in WWE. Nothing matters anymore. Congratulations, Vince McMahon. You are a motherfucking genius when it comes to business, when it comes to finessing, when it comes to getting $1 out of my pocket, and apparently these motherfuckers at networks, because they're so desperate for live content and they see this well-oiled machine that's been going on for, in live weekly, television production since 1993. That alone is a valuable entity, and they've built that up to a point where they've reached a dream scenario for businesses. I'm sure a math problem explains this, like an equation or something, but they have reached a point where the critical aspect has zero effect on their business. As I mentioned last week, that is the American dream. You better come on in, as they said in Superfly. This is crazy. Nothing matters. If they knock it out of the park, it does not matter. If they stink this shit up like they've done at WrestleMania, like they've done most of the Greatest Royal Rumble, like they've done at Backlash, and like they've done on weekly television regularly since WrestleMania, it doesn't matter. Full rock status. This is crazy. WWE found a way. I'm not going to knock anybody for getting money because, that's the objective out here in these streets, is to get paid. I also won't knock when anybody gets some of Vince McMahon's money for this very reason. I feel like a sucker every time I open my wallet for Vince McMahon to hand him $10 a month for this fucking archive that I love. I will never get rid of the WWE Network as long as it exists. And the deal with the network now, with all the money essentially for the company, the cornerstone coming from TV, that has to make you think, how much are they going to put into the network? Will the network even be around? Is it even cost effective to do that? Are they going to cut the shows back? Should they just put this shit back on pay-per-view? We ain't got the answers yet. So we're going to have to wait for that. And, we'll see how it goes. But I can't believe this. This man has done it. This man is brilliant. But this show still ain't good. I don't care what none of y'all say. The next thing we have to talk about is trash-ass Monday Night Raw, because it was fucking terrible. We opened the show with a whole hour of Roman Reigns. And, I dig Roman Reigns, the wrestler. Can't front. In most situations where they let him have matches that actually go back and forth and don't involve him laying on the ground for 10 minutes at a time with a desperate hope to get him cheered. And speaking of desperate hopes to get him cheered, this week they basically threw all the cards on the table, and if you didn't see it, you didn't want to see it. So we had Stephanie McMahon out there, we had Kevin Owens, we had Jinder Mahal, and they linked him up with Seth Rollins. So if the objective ain't to get Roman Reigns cheered, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. They had they should tell you how bad it is when the supposed top heel on the brand, Kevin Owens, has to use a thank you Roman chant for heat. It's amazing. So Stephanie was in rare form because she was just refusing to sell a thing. She came out there and she was Stephanie McMahon, the non-sales lady. She cut Kevin Owens' balls off. She pretty much, tried to talk to Roman Reigns any kind of way she wanted, but Roman got to stand up for himself a little bit, so that was nice to see. But the whole deal with it basically showed who's allowed to do what, and everything like that. So basically she came out there and she talked about, what was best for business, and, there was no hard feelings against Kurt Angle and all this other shit. And, they had, her talking about a Samoan temper and all, several types of other corny sounding shit. They said, Reigns was basically saying, hey, cut the corporate crap because, you guys don't want me anywhere near the Universal title. Meanwhile, we've seen the opportunities that this man's been given over and over again. So I don't know who he's trying to fool or who WWE is trying to fool with this, because this guy here is not fooled. And I know you guys watching this and listening to this aren't fooled. So I don't know. So it was just a whole thing to set up a tag match with Kevin Owens and Jinder Mahal teaming up against Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. We are going to link the hottest guy in Seth Rollins with this dude, Roman Reigns. Why? I don't know. They, want him to get him cheered that badly. Seth is essentially bulletproof at this point, so it's not going to hurt him, thankfully. And the deal with it is really weird, because when Seth and Dean come around, fans will tolerate Roman Reigns. But the second these motherfuckers disappear, they're out of there for Roman Reigns. Like, they're not here for this shit, clearly. I don't know where you got to go. As I mentioned on previous shows, they may have to go to Wakanda to get Roman Reigns cheered, because this is, not happening under normal circumstances in these streets. So, the next thing that I want to talk about from Monday Night Raw, y'all already know what it is. So get your tape decks ready, as they used to say when Lloyd Banks was about to freestyle on Funkmaster Flex back in the day. But this Lashley sister shit. So, for one, I am here for this intersectionality, so that's why I'm going to speak on this. The only folks that I'm in the business of offending are racists. So if you're a racist and you're watching this, turn away or watch and be offended, because I want you to. That whole thing, it wasn't funny. It was offensive. And, the entire segment was an embarrassment. When I was watching this, my girlfriend Catherine looked over at me and almost yelled at me like, what the fuck are you watching? And I shook my head, and in that moment I didn't have an answer. Because this wasn't wrestling. And this wasn't even fucking sports entertainment. Why? Because it has to be entertaining for that term to apply. This was 100% a segment that can suck my dick from the back. You understand me? That whole $1 billion story broke earlier in that day, and all I kept thinking was, Vince McMahon is a fucking crook. There's no doubt about it. A crook of the highest degree. This segment was set up to suck. It did suck. And essentially, this shit crushed Bobby Lashley. Like, he may be finished. I was a Lapsed fan when Lashley was around, and, I didn't get to see him in Impact, where apparently he was awesome and he was a badass, and I think they had MVP with him as his manager cutting his promos, because it's no secret, Bobby Lashley can't talk, apparently. So, they get him back in the WWE, and their fucking grand idea is him beating up 3 black dudes dressed like women in one of the most offensive, tone-deaf moments in WWE history. To not only the trans community, who deal with enough, in their fight to fucking exist, like, also black women who get shit for, their supposed masculinity. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up anything that people have said in the past about Serena and Venus Williams. This is unquestionably the worst segment of the year. WWE should be embarrassed for clearing that bullshit, building it up for a week, and insulting the intelligence of everybody watching. Was Lashley supposed to be the hero for beating up on men dressed like women? I don't know, you tell me. And even if let's go ahead and absolve the wrestlers from this, because, I'm sure someone like Sami Zayn didn't pitch this. As meticulous as that guy is, as thoughtful as that guy is. This is solely on WWE as they continue this creative losing streak that began at WrestleMania 34. And is running fans off no matter how much, money that companies desperate for live content get. And I don't care if this goes viral. I don't care if 1,000 people see it. I don't care if one person sees it. My message to WWE is this. You can't keep offending people because they're going to come for you. Why? Because you deserve it. Fuck that segment as a staff, a record label, and as a crew. And if you co-signing that bullshit, fuck you too. Write better television. After that point, with Monday Night Raw, I was like mentally checked out because there's only so many times you can watch stuff like that and immediately Twitter lit up with just everyone going in on it. I kind of tried to save my venom, for this show with it. But the other thing I want to talk about from Monday Night Raw was the segment between Ronda Rousey, Nia Jax, and Stephanie McMahon. Basically, they were in the ring for a contract signing, and the secret was let out the bag. Neither Ronda or Nia Jax are built for this talking. And it seemed like they were kind of hesitant and somewhat robotic, and neither of them really had anything interesting to say because Nia Jax, who's already the champion, is going to make a name off of Ronda Rousey's expense. I thought you were a star too. I thought you won the championship at WrestleMania. I thought you had defended the belt a couple times. You're already the champion. So them scripting her to say that kind of was a disconnect for me there. With Rousey, it was like, I'm going to take your belt and I'm going to take your arm. So I don't know. It didn't really work for me there. But Stephanie basically stepped in to do what neither of them could. So she basically gave some props to Nia Jax, and she said that she is you boldly chose your next opponent, and she introduced Rousey, and Rousey basically asked Stephanie how her arm was, and whatever. They had, them both sitting down, and Stephanie, in her 6'7" heels and all that, looking super tall and all that. So Stephanie basically asked Rousey how it felt to leapfrog the entire division. And Rousey, women that Rousey has said that are more deserving to her. And then Rousey knew what Stephanie was trying to do, but, Nia Jax challenged her. So that's the money line for this whole thing. And Stephanie basically wondered why Nia issued the challenge and says Nia's trying to make a name for herself at Ronda's expense. She gave Rousey props for the match at WrestleMania 34, but, she says that she hasn't had a singles match yet, and there aren't any weight divisions in WWE. I don't know what 205 Live is, but maybe they were just talking about with the women. This was a whole thing. She flipped from going in on Rousey to starting to go in on Nia, saying, why did it take you so long to beat Alexa Bliss? A question I was wondering myself, because that should have been a squash match both times. But, it was a segment, and it's not really hot. It's just, I think more intrigue is in with Natalya, if she's going to win the Money in the Bank, how it may play into, Rousey being the champion, if she cashes in on her immediately, if she's kind of lurking around as an awkward friend with a briefcase, knowing you're the champion, that strange energy that may exist. Or is this just a whole plot device to get Ronda and Stephanie running it again? So I think there's a lot going on aside from the match. And this isn't going to be, as I mentioned in my column, it's not going to be about match quality. This is none of that. This is either Ronda just winning the belt and we're going to, roll one way with it, or we're about to really get some, Austin McMahon shit. I'm going to fuck you out of your opportunities at the championship, blah, blah, blah. And they may move forward with the Stephanie and Ronda singles match, which I still think they need to do. A mixed tag match was not good enough. I would, like to see Rousey and Stephanie go at it. I'd also be for Rousey getting the championship, because let's face it, the Raw women's division has been the drizzling shits for such a long time. And if they're not going to do premium wrestling with the Raw Women's Championship like in 2016, I'd rather see it on like a big star that people like. So, God bless Nia Jax, but I feel like she's kind of limited in the role as the babyface champion. As far as like her experience, with the wrestling and all that, I don't think it's necessarily going to go the way, folks want it to go. So I was really shocked when she got over the way she did in the feud with Alexa Bliss, but there was almost nowhere to go, essentially. And maybe this is a situation, I'm worried for Nia Jax coming out of this. So we'll see how it all plays out, but they, I think they've got to really be careful with her because she could end up really lost. And she can't be a bit player with the championship behind Ronda and Stephanie. She needs to somehow make her impact on this feud, and hopefully in the coming weeks she will. I checked out NXT last week because, let's face it, it's one of the few things WWE has going on all cylinders right now, and I'm going to be incorporating more NXT coverage going forward, but I just want to give you my thoughts on the show last week. It was fire, straight up. We had the opening segment with Ciampa and Candice, and immediately I felt like one of two things needed to happen. I really feel like they need to get this Ciampa versus Candice popped off, either in a match or more promos against each other. And I say a match because who better to really break into intergender wrestling in WWE than Candice, who that's kind of her thing. And, you know, if you're not here for this intergender wrestling, I can't blame you because it's not necessarily something that I would want to watch, but when this shit sets up this perfectly, oh yeah, they got to run it. I'm here for it all day. But, you know, if you're going to ask me, do I regularly want to see, you know, men fight women, you know, in matches, that's just not me personally. A lot of people like it. A lot of wrestlers defend it, not knocking you. If that's your thing, cool. But if they make it an attraction to, like, where you want to see something there, and you know there's something there, I can roll with that. And if, you know, that's a little bit too rich for WWE's blood, which, you know, understandably it could be because they're trying to do everything to keep that money rolling in. And, you know, man-on-woman violence or woman-on-man violence, you know, they don't really have as much of a problem with that. I don't think that's the way they want to go long-term, especially with, you know, an evil motherfucker like Tommaso Ciampa. But if they're not going to do that, some of the things they mentioned in the promo kind of stuck out to me. She was like, or, you know, they mentioned that Ciampa lived with Candice and Gargano for 2 years. So that could mean anything. That could mean he done seen her before, if you know what I mean. That could mean she done seen him before, if you know what I mean. And he mentioned that line about, you know, when I was watching you marry Johnny, I thought, you know, how could you marry such, you know, essentially a nerd and a dude with no heart and just a whatever, you know, that Ciampa was saying. And I think they need to explore either some type of turn. And I know, yes, it's wrestling. Like how are you going to turn Candice LeRae on Johnny Gargano and they're married in real life? It's wrestling. They can fucking figure it out. They can make this shit like Dusty Rhodes and Baby Doll in the 80s. They can have Candice align with Ciampa at some point and really, you know, get this shit popping. But I don't think they're going to do that. So I think the better option is Ciampa versus Candice. So another thing that I really liked in NXT this week was as Vinny from the Bryan and Vinny show for Wrestling Observer, shouts out to those guys, he had mentioned this was a 5-star, 2-star match, and I couldn't agree more because for those couple minutes it was absolutely electric. It was incredible. It was like seeing a glimpse of WWE's future, which I hope they commit to. Two brothers in there, and you know, I'm here for you know, the black wrestlers all day, and these guys just fucking stole the show essentially. And I saw these guys wrestle on a house show, I want to say probably about 2 months ago maybe, one of the NXT local house shows. I'm located in Florida, so I'm privy to, you know, those shows. I think there's one tomorrow night in Largo I may make an appearance at, but they came out here and took everything they did from those house shows, condensed it, and like sped it up. So it was crazy. So these guys are experienced working against each other for, you know, this takeover match that I assume is on the horizon with them. I've stayed like relatively free of spoilers. So I don't know the matches that were officially like created or anything. But Lars Sullivan brought his big husky ass out there and interrupted it, and you could hear the fans go, "No!" no, because they were showing Ricochet and Dream in the corner on the far left. So what happened was you saw everyone in the crowd looking the other way and going no, as they knew Lars Sullivan was coming in here to fuck up this great match they were seeing. And it was like a kick in the dick, but the thing was, something is there with those guys and it's going somewhere. And NXT has built enough trust with the audience to make it, okay for this to happen. So they said that they wanted him next week, and I need to check that show out and all that. I'll probably watch it sometime this weekend. Keep it like a week behind with the NXT coverage because it's taped. No reason for me to really, go into it super crazy. And also the what's her name? Lacey Evans looked good in a win over Brandy Lauren, who wrestles as Ava Story, I believe, on the Indies, if I'm not mistaken. She was looking super athletic. Her moonsault looked as good or better than Charlotte's. Lacey Evans could be someone to watch. I think she's she's blonde, so WWE always likes the blondes, and her gimmick and all that is made for Ford F-150 Twitter. It is made for, I'm calling the cops Twitter. It's made for Stand for the Anthem Twitter, and everything else that goes along with that. So she could go a long way in this climate that we're in. So I'm looking forward to see where she goes from there. And of course, we had the main event with the Undisputed Era taking on Pete Dunne and our guys Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch. Shouts out to Danny Burch from the Florida independent scene, who has done his thing and really gotten to WWE big time now. So I love Pete Dunne and how this dude is just the most not give a fuck motherfucker that I've ever seen in my life. And putting them with those guys, I really enjoyed the match, and I think that was about as good of an hour of television that you could have really asked for. So if you didn't see that NXT show, I implore you, please check it out. Give it a look. If WWE has you disenchanted right now, I'm sure NXT won't. So start giving NXT your time if Raw is really pissing you off. If SmackDown has you kind of feeling like, all right, y'all got all the stars in place, and which we'll talk about in a moment, but what you really doing with them? So, check out NXT, check out 205 Live. The next thing that we had to talk about was SmackDown. And SmackDown is the much easier show to watch on a week-to-week basis, obviously because it's 2 hours long. Hopefully it stays that way and they don't get any brilliant ideas on making it a 3-hour show, or else I may lift the background up behind me and kick my television in barefoot, karate style like Bruce Lee, and basically, ruin my feet and my TV. So, you remember when Bill Goldberg put his elbow through that limo? That's essentially what would happen to me. And I would be laid up in the hospital, not able to give you guys these shows, this entertainment, these laughs, and do my thing and contribute to the Social Suplex Podcast Network. So I don't want to do that. So hopefully y'all stay at 2 hours, so I don't have to do such a thing. But, Daniel Bryan, he continues to wrestle awesome TV matches in the SmackDown main event. If we take it back to his first SmackDown back, him and AJ Styles went out there, did some good work, him and Rusev, and then him and Jeff Hardy, and he's coming out here and changing things up. He's looking like kind of jacked for, a dude his size. And obviously we got Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe next week, which is sure to be awesome unless they have Big Cass roll his ass out there, which I don't really believe he's hurt. I think that's a whole work, and we'll see. Hopefully they give us that Bryan and Joe the way we want it. Of course, I prefer for it to be on pay-per-view, but with how they're doing their pay-per-views now, maybe it's the best thing for them to just leave it on free TV. But this guy Daniel Bryan is slowly weaving in new things that he does, like that heel hook put Cass in the the state that he was in with his knee. He cut a promo that was on WWE or on WWE's YouTube channel, basically saying he's gonna heel hook Samoa Joe and tear his ACL. So he's really aggressive right now. Daniel Bryan has been holding back, obviously, and he's kind of tweaking his persona a little bit and his moveset to match. So I'm looking forward to see where that leads. We saw Andrade Cien Almas again. against another jobber. Y'all know how I felt about this last week. I don't want to see him wrestling jobbers. Why? Because all it tells me is you have no idea what to do with him for now. Money in the Bank is coming. I'm terrified he's not going to be on the card. We haven't seen Sanity show up. They have no idea what they're doing for them. AOP wrestled a couple times and disappeared. They clearly have no idea what they're doing with them. You're seeing all these NXT dudes show up at these house shows, which I think is a cool thing. But it is kind of troubling because it's like, hold on. These guys that are showing up, you ain't doing shit with them. You ain't doing shit with Tyler Breeze. You ain't doing shit with the Revival. And these dudes just showing up here and there. So, I mean, that's cool for the fans. Don't get it twisted. But it's kind of concerning, especially when it seems like they are trying to play collect a wrestler to make sure they don't go anywhere else. So, disappointed what they did with Andrade Cien Almas. Sonya Deville versus Naomi was shockingly, good. And I say shockingly because, I saw that match. I had no expectations for it. I think Naomi's super athletic. Always enjoyed her as a wrestler. Sonya Deville, I think she's coming along a lot faster than, people may have initially given her credit for. All we got to do is stop making her stand in that silhouette and throw those punches. Everything else I'm cool with. I like the way she glides around the ring, with her knees hitting the mat like she's a shooter, even though they've kind of dolled her up a little bit more and got away from the MMA fighter gimmick, in that sense. Throwing all those punches and all that, it just makes it kind of look low rent, especially with Rousey hanging out. So, I don't know. Maybe that's something they want to look at. But they had a lot of interesting sequences that they seemed like they either, committed to memory or they had it worked out, perfectly. And I thought they did a really good job. Nakamura versus Styles, the entire thing has been a disaster. Obviously, we got the lackluster WrestleMania match. We had the Greatest Royal Rumble with a count-out that built to a pay-per-view match that had no disqualifications, if I'm not mistaken. And they end that with a double dick kick to do a clean finish on TV, which they select a stipulation that is a last man standing match. Last man standing matches, I'm going to say this, in WWE, last man standing matches are not for great wrestlers. They are for limited ones. They are for dudes that you aren't sure can have a great match. And maybe Nakamura and Styles have kind of earned this. Hey, if y'all can't come out here and have this classic with this, I don't know. But when I heard about this, whole feud, a last man standing match is not what I wanted to see. I didn't want to see these guys club each other with weapons. These guys are technically proficient. They're athletically thrilling, and all they've been is fucked in all their finishes. They've booked awful matches on purpose to lead to this. Why are they trying to be this cute with it? I don't understand. I don't, realize, I don't understand why they can't just get out the way and let these dudes blow the roof off the building. In addition to, they healed them and all that. Because Nakamura, I don't know if y'all saw this promo this week, but this dude can clearly speak English. He can emote. He can make his actions match his words, match his body. He can do everything. This dude is special, and I'm terrified because the way this is set up, you would think AJ Styles is about to beat this man and get him the fuck out of here, and we're about to see Nakamura putting over every motherfucker under the sun. Then Nakamura's going to be like, holla, and then he'll be showing up at Invasion Attack 2019 or something like that after the 3 months is up. So I don't know what they're going to do with this whole finish and all that. Of course, I'm looking forward to the match because I'll watch these dudes wrestle as many times as, needed. But you can't get away from the fact that I feel like they diminished the attraction by making this the 5th match to happen in under 2 months. Okada and Omega, for comparison's sake, the first one was January 2017. They're about to do the 4th one now. And they found a way to, keep these dudes away from each other and have them do other shit. I don't know, man. It's just a whole thing where they want to book show to show. But, like I said, it doesn't matter. They've got the money. People, are going to come out here and stand for it all they want. But it's a whole situation where it's just sad because we know these guys had so much more. They're capable of so much more. And I don't understand why WWE essentially got in the way of the brilliance. And it's kind of making me look at AJ Styles' title reign like, hey, man, should we get the belt on somebody else? Because I feel like Daniel Bryan's going to eventually get that momentum. The Money in the Bank briefcase, maybe a SmackDown guy needs to win it. Maybe we got to send Styles off to, like, piss him off again. I don't know if he's complacent. I don't know if it's, like, him just, you know, deciding, like, I am the leader of this show, so I'm going to wrestle in a way where I'm not taking as many risks. I'm not, you know, putting my body through hell so I can, A, keep making this money, B, stay on the road on top, you know, because they say there is a theory that, you know, you work your way to get to the top, and then when you get to the top, you change your style to stay there. So maybe that's, you know, a little bit what's going on with Styles, and it's not like Styles is falling off or becoming a bum or anything like that. It's like a little bit of that Rollins thing that I always mention. Maybe he's not throwing 100 anymore. Maybe Styles is like throwing 94 right now. So it'll be interesting. I hope that they can figure out something, because this feud is on borrowed time, and I feel like a title change needs to happen, and I feel like these guys are ripe for Money in the Bank cash-in in this match. Double last man standing, I don't know, man. Too many sirens are going off, and it would be so easy for someone to cash in, to make this a three-way, to continue it, but they could just as easily get rid of Nakamura, count 10 on him, not pin him and quote-unquote protect him, but that would drop him to 0-6 in his WWE title matches, which is shameful, seeing as how they let him lose to Jinder fucking Mahal. The last segment of the show today, I wanted to pay tribute to the late, great Owen Hart. I wrote down in my show format today, and some of you see me on video, you might see me glance down or something like that. All I have written for this is, let's see, pay tribute to Owen Hart. And for a man named Owen Hart, I figured the best way I could pay tribute to him was to speak from mine. And Owen Hart was, from all accounts that, you know, I've seen in DVDs and stories and books, an excellent individual who loved his fellow wrestlers, loved his family, and wanted nothing more than to have great matches and have fun and make people laugh. And I've been fortunate in my life not to lose someone like an Owen Hart, someone that touched people that deeply on that many levels, like in a long time. I lost my grandfather when I was younger, and I was about 14 years old, and I think that's been the biggest, like, kind of death that's happened to me personally, unless I'm, like, forgetting somebody or something. But with Owen Hart, you know, it goes without saying he was a phenomenal wrestler, years ahead of his time. If I had to, you know, compare Owen Hart to anybody right now, it's freaking hard. It's like, I think he, you know, I don't think he was the world champion or anything in WWE. He got a chance to wrestle for it. He got a chance to make a rivalry, you know, with his brother that made you feel something. You got a chance with Owen Hart to really come in with him as a performer, whether it was as a slimy heel that had just the wittiest, funniest things. Like, you couldn't even hate the guy. I was a huge Shawn Michaels fan, and when I would see Owen Hart, and I would be like, and there was something weird with it. Owen Hart would hit him with the ensiguri, and it felt like my soul would just fall out of my body, because I saw his boots, right, his shiny black boots, and I used to think, man, those boots that he's wearing, those things make a loud ass noise, and this is me as a 6 or 7 year old, so I don't know they're slapping their thighs or anything to make that shit sound off like it does. But the first match that I watched when I was a kid that I found myself watching over and over and over again, really learning to understand wrestling, was Shawn Michaels versus Owen Hart at In Your House February 96, and that will be my match recommendation of the week. I'm going to watch that match after I'm done tonight, and just think about, you know, how the role Owen Hart had in pulling me into wrestling the way that he did. So back in 96, I had the hot box, as they say. So, you know, we're past the statute of limitations and all that, so I can talk about illegal stuff we had hooked up. So it was In Your House 96. They used to play this shit on the pay-per-view channel on loop. So I would see Shawn Michaels versus Owen Hart all the time. And it was for... you know, it was Shawn Michaels that won the Royal Rumble, and he had to put his title shot on the line against Owen Hart. The winner would face the winner of Bret Hart and Diesel, which was the main event in the cage. So I was like, man, if Owen Hart wins and if Diesel wins, it's Diesel and Owen Hart. I don't know if I want to see that, but maybe they can do Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, or maybe they do Shawn Michaels and Diesel, you know, something like that. So this was a time where I didn't know, you know, all that stuff. Like, obviously this was planned out way in advance, and things worked out the way they should have worked out with the Iron Man match happening. But you couldn't tell me that Shawn Michaels wasn't in real danger that night, because Owen Hart came to fucking ball. He whooped Shawn Michaels' ass the whole match and put together, like, I want to say it was... If I had to put a rating on it right now, I'd probably say about a 4.25 match. I would say about 4.25. I'll go that. And it was always interesting to me with that match, because Owen was just as good as Shawn. And that's not taking anything away from Shawn Michaels. That's just saying, hey, these dudes are both on the level. Owen Hart, obviously, you know, never was champion, as I mentioned before, but he won his fair share of championships. He was a revolutionary junior heavyweight in Japan. He was a guy that was all over the mid-card in WWE. He obviously had the classic feud with his brother. And fortunately, I was never in a situation where I had a rivalry with my brother or anything like that, but I could imagine that storyline really touched people in a certain way, especially back then, because of how quote-unquote real, you know, things felt back then. And these guys took that shit dead ass serious. They didn't ride together. They didn't do anything. But for everything Owen did to make us happy on screen, whether it was tagging with the British Bulldog, raising his slammies, being with Jim Cornette, being with Yokozuna, it's like, it's so unfortunate we lost him the way we did. And he literally gave his life for the wrestling business. I know he didn't die for wrestling, but he died in wrestling. And I don't think that's necessarily like commendable or anything like that. And obviously that's not, you know, what I mean by that, but that's not like, hey, you know, he did this for the business. Like, that's not what I'm saying. He died doing something that he loved, but the Owen Hart that I've heard about loved his family more than anything else. So hearing, you know, and seeing, you know, Owen Hart lose his life like that over a stupid stunt, it was like, how did we get that far in wrestling? I'm so glad we've never really had to go that far to those places to do these absurd stunts again. You know, when Shane McMahon jumps off the Hell in a Cell and all that, it's not the same as jumping from the real rafters that are way the fuck up there, that are 90 feet in the air, not 30 feet in the air, even though that's got its own set of problems. I met Bret Hart a couple months ago, and he talked about some of the ways Owen would prank people. And of course, he talked about the way, you know, him and Stu, he would do Stu's voice. And it was crazy talking to Bret Hart about it. Like, man, I don't know what else to say except, you know, I thank Owen Hart for everything he gave to wrestling, and I hope fans never forget him, no matter, you know, that how many times they pass on him for the Hall of Fame, or how many times his wife doesn't clear him for the Hall of Fame. Mark Henry gave a wonderful, like, you know, essentially plea to Martha to let Owen Hart and his son, like, come around the business and put Owen and honor him the way that he should be honored. You know, he wasn't a world champion. He wasn't, you know, a super main event talent time draw, like big time draw. So, like, younger generations, they have no idea. It's like, oh, it was Bret Hart's brother and all this other stuff. But if you watch Owen Hart back then, you knew how talented that dude was. And I'll never forget, I was in 4th grade when he died. And it was like, I think it was a pay-per-view that I didn't see at the time. And someone was like, Owen Hart died. I was like, you're lying. No fucking way. And then I get home, and then they're watching, the Owen Hart tribute episode and seeing Edge crying, Jeff Jarrett crying, who he was like kind of in a tag team with at the time, and just the sadness and the love that everyone had for Owen. That always stuck with me. I haven't ever watched the show since. Maybe I'll check it out. Hopefully, I'll try not to. I was watching the Owen Hart DVD last night, watching all the ribs that he played on people and hearing the stories told. It's such a loss. So the best thing I feel like we can do as podcasters, content creators, columnists, is to let people know how great Owen Hart was. WWE slowly trying to. Unfortunately, there's a situation with the family and, his wife that we just haven't got past yet, but I hope they don't get past it before it's too late, before people don't care, before, the generations go by and it's just like he doesn't mean as much as he should, because Owen Hart was better than that. And Owen Hart, he didn't deserve to die like that. No one does. Especially for this fake ass business. That's going to wrap up the show, man. Thank you guys for listening to One Nation Radio this week. If you checked me out on the video, I appreciate you guys rocking with me here. I'm still testing a couple things out with the lights and the setup and everything. So, going to try to, do a couple things here for you guys with that. Make sure you guys check out the rest of the shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. The Impact Report with Caleb Baldwin. The Outsider's Edge with Rance and Carl. What up? The Ricky and Clyde Wrestling Podcast. Believe they dropped a special this week on the UK tournament, and Rance was on that show. Make sure you guys check that out. And yes, Rance, after 2,000 years, we are now on the list. So, also Keepin It Strong Style with Jeremy and Johnson, premier New Japan podcast, the ace of podcasts on the internet. And also Grown Men Watch This Shit, which is hosted by Chris and Jeremy. So, different Jeremy from Jeremy Donovan. Thank you guys for listening to One Nation Radio, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.
Thank you for listening to One Nation Radio. We'll see you next time.